Welcome to our event. We're going to get started right on time. This is why now is time to consciously craft your research career, brought to you by the UX Researchers Guild. And just a quick note, by attending, you consent to us recording, editing, and using this content for educational purposes and sometimes marketing purposes. So just be aware we are recording this session. To facilitate networking among you, we have created a spreadsheet, which will be posted in the chat here. You can share your details. And then following the session itself, we will have optional breakout rooms if you want to stay and network with the other attendees. So stay tuned if you'd like to participate in our networking breakout rooms. One fun thing we have today, we do a giveaway. So at the end of today's session, we're going to give away a prize to someone who asks a question in the chat during the event. So our giveaway prize is the book Never Search Alone by Phil Terry. So if you would like to have a chance at getting that prize, please submit your thoughtful questions in the chat. I'd also like to make you aware of a couple of events we have coming up to attend or share with your network. Our next event is on April 25th, and it will be a second session with Roberta specifically for research leaders. So share that out with the folks you know. We will paste the link for you to invite leaders to our next session with Roberta. So that will be in the chat. We also have a session coming up on May 17th, and that is about our job search councils. I will turn the time over to Tracy Hayes to make a little bit of an announcement about what our job search councils are.
Sure. Thanks, Danielle. I'm Tracy Hayes. I'm a personal leadership coach and a longtime UXer. I'm leading the Guild's Job Search Council program. We sometimes call them JSCs. And JSCs are peer support groups for folks who are seeking jobs, seeking work, or their next career move, following a specific search process. I love it because it's a UX type process where you sort of design your brand and your search with intention. And if you're ready to do that kind of hard introspective work and commit about 80 hours over 10 weeks, so not much, right? To boost your search and your network, this is a program that could be really great for you. I'm very enthusiastic about it. It's a process that makes a lot of sense. So we have posted a link in the chat that'll allow you to get a bunch more information that Raymond's put together, sort of like a conglomerate way for you to just see it at a glance, as well as the ability to drill down. And as Danielle said, on the 17th, we're going to have an event for the folks who are in existing job search councils, as well as those of you who are still gathering a little bit more of information to see what it's about and how it's going for us. And that's about it.
All right. Thanks, Tracy. Yeah, I'm looking forward to those. That's going to be so impactful. So we'll see you all at job search councils on the 17th. Now I would love to welcome our special guest today, Roberta Dombrowski. So Roberta is currently a research partner at Maze, and formerly she's the VP of research at User Interviews. And her mission is to help leaders transform the way they live and learn and work. So toward that end, Roberta founded Learn Mindfully. And through her company, she has coached over 200 clients from companies like Adobe, Instacart, Zoom, and many more. She's also the author of a self-reflection and career planning workbook called Consciously Crafting Your Career Path. And she'll be leading us through an exercise from that workbook today. So I'm very excited, and I will now turn the time over to Roberta.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Danielle. Hi, everyone. I'm Roberta. I'm a leadership and career coach at Learn Mindfully. During our time together today, we're going to really chat all about how to consciously craft your career. When it comes to like the agenda for our time, we're going to talk a little bit about the market. We're going to talk about needs at work. We're going to do a reflection activity, and then I want to leave a lot of time for Q&A. If folks have questions, I'm happy to answer. Just some kind of like ground rules, just to set expectations of how we'll engage today. Please participate. You can send in comments in the chat, questions via the chat. Be open to sharing your experiences, engaging, and please try to be respectful of others in the group. If we do get questions at the end and we don't get to all of them, I will try to do my best to follow up with folks and engage outside of this environment, either on LinkedIn or any other channel. So super excited to dive in today. Just to set some context, because for many of us, it is our first time together. It is the first time I'm seeing everyone. I see some friendly faces, but there's a lot of newbies here that I haven't met before. I want to share a little bit about my background. Like many of you, I started my career as an individual contributor. I actually specialized in ed tech and learning products as a learning experience designer. So I was creating virtual in-person training. And then I ended up moving into product management. Worked at this company called the Predictive Index and then Pluralsight. I realized that in that role as a product manager, that research was actually my favorite part of my role. And I decided that I wanted to specialize as a user researcher. And so by some goodwill, some grace, I actually got an amazing opportunity to transition into a research manager role at a company called edX, which is an ed tech company. From there, I ended up getting another really amazing opportunity by a stroke of chance. I ended up getting a VP of user research role at User Interviews. I was there for about 3 years. And then right now, just transitioned a few months ago to be a research partner at Maze. And I ended up founding my own company about coming up on the 2-year anniversary next month of Learn Mindfully, which I'm really excited about. But one of the things that I noticed when I was at User Interviews, I was the VP of research, I was reporting into the CEO. And although it doesn't look like it from these photos from the outside, I felt the really isolating experience of being an only in the room. I was the only researcher when I joined the team, so I was building the function from scratch. I was the only woman often on the leadership team, the only person of color on the leadership team. And this was really a trend throughout my entire career. So being an only within a team or an entire organization. And so when I was building teams from scratch, I often carried the weight of constantly trying to prove my value, prove my worth as a researcher, as just a woman in the workplace. And it was really exhausting, quite frankly. It didn't leave time for the things that mattered most to me. At the same time, because I was researching, I was typically interviewing researchers in this role. So I've probably spoken to like 2,000 researchers over the last 5 years. And I usually ask them, I start every interview with, what's the biggest challenge? What's your biggest challenge in your workday? What's keeping you up at night? And I noticed the same kind of themes coming up again and again. I would hear things like, I want to make an impact. I'm really sick of doing more with less. I want a clear path forward in my career. I'm not getting the support I need from my manager, from my organization. I see some of you like nodding your heads, yes. So I have a feeling this resonates, but as I was doing research, even though I was working on a research tool, I realized these were not research problems. They were actually leadership development, professional development problems, and they just kept sticking with me. And so that's what really led me to found Learn Mindfully about 2 years ago. For those unfamiliar or hearing for the first time, it is a coaching training company really dedicated to leveling the playing field at work. As a trained coach, I ended up going through certification as I was working as a researcher. I've really dedicated my practice to people who feel like onlys in the room. So the only person who feels a certain way, maybe cares about a certain thing, or even looks a certain way. It's just my personal journey. And so my hope is to be there for others as well. And so I'm super excited to be here with everyone today. Why I decided to found Learn Mindfully is because I did a lot of deep self-reflection, and these are just some fundamental truths of just my background that really helps set the stage for our time together today too. At my core, I just believe that learning is a fundamental human right. I think that everybody should have access to learn, regardless of your background, education status, race, religion, all of that. I believe that everyone also should have access to resources that help them thrive and not just survive. That includes inside of work and outside of work. And I also believe that all of us here, regardless of level, title, role, can spark change. So every one of us is a leader, and we can lead in different areas of our lives and our careers as well. And so this is just a little bit of kind of my perspective and what I hope to share with everyone today. But I hope this kind of sets understanding about kind of where I'm coming from and how that shows up within the presentation I'll be sharing today. Now you know a little bit about me. I want to transition and talk a little bit about the market. It's a little bit of a mess right now. I know folks here are searching for work. Maybe they're dealing with a layoff, or maybe they're searching because they're just unhappy in their current role. It's been a mess for a while. It makes sense. It's really been the last few years, honestly. We survived, I use in quotes, the pandemic of 2020. Last year, they just formally ended it. And so we now don't need to wear masks anymore. But that transformed a lot about how we work, how we define what matters to us at work as well. There's also been a recent study that was done, I believe, literal over 2 years ago at this point, looking at data from 2022 to 2024. And there's been tons of mass layoffs and market changes. And these have been inadvertently affecting UX teams, UX roles, and specifically research roles in particular. And according to layoffs.fyi, over 450,000 tech workers have been laid off over the last 2 years. Many of you may be in that spot. I've been there as well. I went through a layoff in between over the last few years, and you're exploring what's next. I want each of you to know that you're not alone. That's why the things like the job search councils are so amazing, is because you can come together with other people and see that you're not alone while you're on your journey, while you're searching. In addition to the market and layoffs and all of that, there is, in a recent study that was done by McKinsey, they found that over 75% of employees actually said that their sense of purpose was actually defined by work. But when they asked those same people, only 15% felt like they were actually living their purpose at work. And so that shows a gap. It shows also that a lot of us have a sense of identity and fulfillment interlaced into our work. And that gets uprooted when things like layoffs end up happening and impacting us. We start to think about, what does that mean? Who am I? What type of impact do I really want to have? In the same study, they also saw that over 2/3 of US-based employees said that COVID-19 made them actually rethink their purpose too. And so all of these shifts are really making us focus on this moment of, what does work mean to me? Where does it fit into the grand scheme of things? And perhaps it's been showing up for some of you. I know it showed up for myself as well. So the reality that I'm trying to kind of convey here is that work is really personal and deep to all of us in different ways. And what is fulfilling for one person is going to be really different for somebody else. And that's fine. That's okay. But often what happens in the workplace is that we're given these career ladders. We're told leveling. We're told, okay, you're an IC, then you go up to manager, then you're a VP. But what really needs to happen at this moment is like a slowing down and seeing, is this what I really want? Do I want to make a VP or manager, or do I love just the craft of research? Both of those things are okay, and it will depend on your background and what you're looking for. And so, what's really important in this moment is actually to have a compass that will help guide you. You'll be able to separate out the signals from the noise so that you can be aware of what you actually enjoy within your wider life and within your career and work life. Um, One of the frameworks that I really love to help ground myself is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I'm assuming that folks here are very familiar. This is just kind of like a slicing a different perspective, but it's actually taking the same framework and applying it to a work context. For those who are unfamiliar, I know we all come from different backgrounds. Maslow is a famous psychologist. He really focused on describing core 5 needs that need to be met before people can progress to the next. And so this framework was applied by a woman named Jennifer Heretti. She works at Indeed. And so she applied it to the work context. And so I'll talk a little bit about what that actually means. I also want to note that this framework is, it can be applied for most working professionals in the Western world. It's going to depend based on like location, organizational context, and stuff like that. So as I'm describing these as well. So at the bottom of this needs hierarchy is physiological. And so these are things like food, water, shelter, clothing that need to be, you need to really in order to survive. When I say surviving versus thriving, you need all of these core needs met in order to be satisfied, in order to think, get creative, and really progress to the next level. Once those basic needs are met, safety is also another vital need. And so applied to work, it means that workers need to feel physically, psychologically safe in order to perform. If you are concerned about things like layoffs, budget cuts, office politics, they can actually have a huge impact on workplace well-being and safety. One of my friends, Ala Weinberg, she's an amazing coach. She's an amazing speaker. She actually wrote an amazing book called A Culture of Safety that is free, that actually digs into this a little bit more of what does safety mean? How does it show up at work? For anybody who is interested, we can definitely send that link as well. The next kind of, once those safety needs are met, this is where belonging comes in. This relates to whether you actually have opportunities to build relationships at work with peers, coworkers, even your direct manager or a leadership team. This is why you may see things like culture surveys, pulse surveys showing up. They're trying to measure, are you connecting with other people? And this also relates to why a lot of people want back to office, return to office too, is because when we went remote with COVID, that changed a lot of belonging and whether we feel like we have connections with others at work. After you get those relationship needs met, the next kind of order is esteem. So this relates to whether you actually feel like you're driving an impact within the wider business. We all want to feel like we're doing things that are making a difference, that are meaningful, that are having an impact either within the business or even to customers. That's why a lot of us go into user research, is because we care, we have empathy. And so it's, are we making an impact with the actual work that we're doing? And then finally, the top level is self-transcendence. So do you feel like you're actually serving a wider calling or making a contribution to the world? Many workers in really developed countries actually find their lower order needs getting met. They have food on the table, they have relationships, they have peers, and now they want to make a difference. They want to find some type of higher calling. And this rings true to myself. My parents, I grew up hearing like, you just need a good job, you need salary, you need benefits, save for retirement. I didn't hear like, hey, you should do what makes you happy. And so that's really a lot of us in this new generation, we're thinking about what's going to make me happy, what's my purpose, once we get those lower order needs met. And so one of my favorite writers is Parker Palmer. He talks about how our deepest calling is to grow into our authentic selfhood, whether or not it conforms to be an image of who we ought to be. As we do, we will not only find the joy that every human being seeks, but we will also find our path to authentic service in the world. True vocation joins self in service. He is a beautiful writer, and he is someone who inspires me so much. I view myself, my path, really as a gardener. I'm planting seeds, I'm creating spaces, environments for others to thrive and grow. And so that's where I love being as I think about my vocation and calling. But it's likely that work might mean something different for each of you. And so I'd love for everyone to just take a few moments, think to yourself, why do you work? What needs does work fill for you? And if you're willing to share, please go ahead and share in the chat. Tim, thanks for being the confident one throwing it out there, providing for family. Yeah, absolutely. Chris says work keeps me motivated, it gives me purpose. Absolutely. Kenzie, financial needs, intellectual, social, Judith, advocating for others. Yes, absolutely. And it might be a mix of all these things, right? It's not like black and white, one thing or the other, but I know I work to pay my mortgage, but I also work for this higher purpose too, and connection and belonging. Absolutely. To help people, yeah, to grow and learn new things. Yeah. Yeah, Tracy says multifaceted. Yes, absolutely. Thank you everyone for sharing. It's really beautiful to see. It's also, as a researcher, seeing the patterns too. I'm like, oh yes, I can tell what unites us when it comes to a career as well. So let's shift a little bit. One of the most valuable tools that we have really as leaders, because everyone here is a leader, is self-awareness. And so today I'm going to talk a little bit about the conscious career wheel as a tool to help you think about your career. And it's going to help us look at two different areas when it comes to work and our leadership style, the self, and then the work that we actually do. So one side of the wheel, the inner wheel, is the self. This is really all about your inner power. The outer wheel is all about work. This is about your organization. How do you show up? Are you getting your needs met at work as well? This tool is super helpful to just take a step back and shift perspective. Sometimes we can lose context when we're in the day-to-day at work. So you can use it to just understand, get a pulse check of where you are within your career. You can look at growth opportunities, think about where you might want to go moving forward. You can reflect on your own needs. Are they getting met at work? Are they not getting met? And then you can also use it to navigate conversations with others around your career. So once you have a little better idea of like what's working for you, you can say like, hey boss, my needs are not being met here. Let's have a conversation about it. Let's talk about it a little bit more. The leaders that I work with within Learn Mindfully typically use this as a tool. We do it during our partnership together, and then I encourage them to revisit it every 6 months. It's just like a pulse check to be like, hey, how am I doing? How are things going? So once you guys have it, you can use it. Feel free to recheck in with it as well. As we do this activity, I want each of you to also remember that there is no such thing as a perfect score. There's no right or wrong answers. They're all unique to you. And you are unique, and so is your career. Your answers are going to shift where you are in your career as you progress. I like to call it seasons of your career. And so your answers are gonna really depend based on where you are, the product you're working on, the company you're working for, and just your individual experience. So I'm gonna send a link. I think Helen might have sent it already. Um, but go to this webpage, download the activity. We're gonna do it interactive style together here. As you download the wheel, pages 2 to 3 has descriptions. As we're going through each factor, rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 5. Don't overthink it. Just rate yourself. Think about where you are in this moment. If you've recently gone through a layoff, you can think about your most recent role. And this will just give you an accurate picture of where you are currently. Have folks been able to download it? Give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Good. Cool. Awesome. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So first thing we're going to start with is the self. This is page 2 in your handout. This is also interactive, so when you download it, you can just like type in and check things off as well. All right, so the self. Leadership is all about really your inner power. And so if we want to be authentic, intentional leaders and really lead in a way that is authentic, sustainable, and conscious, we need to start within. We need to do self-reflection and understand more about ourselves really before we can lead others. And so the first kind of bucket when we think about the self is really this: do you know what drives you, your purpose, values, and really opportunities for growth? Do you create time for things like self-reflection? And so rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 5 for awareness. All right. The next element of the self is really authenticity. And so, do you find yourself making choices that align with your values? Do you show up the same regardless of how things are when they are at work? So, when you're in a stressful situation or maybe it's a calm situation, do you show up as yourself in an authentic way? Again, rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 5. The next part of the self is courage, and courage is really all about: do you take action despite being in new or uncertain situations? So, are you able to make decisions and move forward despite being fearful or not knowing the next right step? Okay. The next area is compassion. Compassion is really all about self acceptance. So, if you mess up, do you treat yourself as a friend? Are you able to recover, bounce back from challenges? Sylvia, I want to recognize, if you are dealing with a layoff, you don't need to mark yourself lower, but you can think back in your head to how you felt in your previous role if possible. But if you want to rate yourself lower in any of these, you can as well. For the next bucket, for accountability, accountability is all about showing up for yourself. It's all about your habits, behavior, well being. Do you follow through on the things that you say you're going to do? How do you manage yourself? How do you manage your boundaries? The next component of the self is really all about curiosity. So curiosity is all about learning from experiences around you. Do you see things as learning opportunities? Do you embrace things on a growth mindset? And so just want to do a quick check-in for the self. What are you noticing so far? Feel free to type it into the chat if anything's coming up for you. Judith, I see your comment about feeling more mature. Absolutely. I felt that a lot as well. I've always been someone who's very introspective and aware. So yeah, Jocelyn, Nika, yeah, biggest critic. It's okay too if you notice you're rating yourself pretty low. Yeah. Thank you, Tracy, for sharing. Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for sharing and your vulnerability. Really appreciate it. Let's shift a little bit. We're going to follow up with the outer ring. This is on page 3 of the handout. Really, the outer ring is all about work. And so, really, as leaders, we operate within larger systems, which are the work environments. It could also be just other systems, communities, companies. And so, these areas in this next section are actually scientifically proven by Marcus Buckingham. He's an organizational psychologist of the elements that really inform happiness at work and how we show up at work. And so when we think back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, this is purpose. This is all about how are we being of service? Do we have a higher purpose? Do we feel like we connect to a wider mission, either our own or maybe of the organization, business, maybe a purposeful project we're working on? So feel free to rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 5 for this bucket. The next element's all about connection. Again, it's all about being able to develop healthy, genuine connections with others on your team. It could be your pod, your squad, leadership team. Is it healthy connections, or are you finding they're more kind of dysfunctional based on the organization? It really can depend. And yes, Tracy, it's tied to feelings at current organization. The next bucket is clarity. So clarity is key. Do you feel like you actually know what's expected of you? Are you being set up for success by your manager, your team, by your organization? The next area is ownership. So do you feel like you have autonomy, a sense of control over the things that you're working on? We know that with budget cuts and things like that, there's really a hyper focus on some of the work. Do you feel like you have control over it, or are you being micromanaged by other people? The next area is recognition. So do you feel like you get recognition for the work that you're doing? And this can be really deeply personal. For some people, it might be monetary reward, so like comp, it might be promotion. For others, it might be just like a private thank you if you're introverted or anything like that, just a thank you from other people. The next bucket is work-life balance. So this is really all about recovery. We're not robots, we're holistic humans. When you hit the end of the workday or work week, do you feel like you actually have energy to do the things that are meaningful to you, whatever that may be? Or do you feel like you just collapse and want to zone out and like watch Netflix because you just don't have energy to do anything else? The next bucket is values alignment, and values alignment is really critical, at least for me personally. So, do you feel like you're surrounded by people at work who care about the same things, who maybe care about things like ethics or inclusive products? Or do you feel like your organization is selling customer data to third parties? That would kind of be an example of a values misalignment. It's what do you care about, what's important to you versus what's important to the organization. And that is a real life example too from a role I was previously in of something that happened. So and finally, the next one is growth. So, do you feel like you're given the opportunity to develop new skills inside your organization? Maybe you get mentorship, coaching, or maybe you even get things like professional development budget, or you can work on like a stretch project from every now and then. And so I want each of you to just take a moment. What did you notice? What surprised you from this activity? What do you want to carry forward? And feel free to type it again in the chat if you like. Oh yeah, Helen, good work-life balance is definitely out of reach. I feel that one a lot. Thanks, Alana. It was good to see you. Yeah, Lorenzo says links between purpose and awareness. Jocelyn, Lois, lack of clarity is Lois. Yeah. Lack of time for rest and hobbies, Melissa. This is something I hear a lot from people, especially with layoffs, is that folks are kind of picking up the work, doing the work of 2 to 3 people right now sometimes. And so it leaves doesn't leave a lot of energy at the end of the day, unfortunately. Yeah, Cecilia, these are easier. Very cool. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Tracy says, surprised how easy it is, whole numbers that are aligned with work. And then with work, there's more decimal points. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks everyone so much for sharing. Really appreciate it. On page 4 of the handout, you'll actually see this full wheel image. I encourage each and every one of you to take some time after today, do some deeper digging. You can actually print it out, color it in if you'd like, and continue to revisit it on a recurring cadence if you'd like to. As you continue to explore what's next, if you're curious about your results, a general rule of thumb is if you scored low on any of the areas of the self, typically the solutions that you'll want to investigate, look into, really relate to inner areas for yourself. Things like mindset, things like imposter syndrome, self-compassion. So these are just some coaching questions for yourself if you'd like to continue to explore. Where do you think maybe you need to take charge more, or where you'd like to take charge more? What's holding you back? How might you give yourself some more compassion? So feel free to explore some more in those areas if you've noticed some low responses that you rated yourself. And then if you found yourself scoring low in the work areas, these are things like you can ask yourself, how can you create more clarity for yourself? What do better boundaries look like if you feel like work-life balance isn't there? And are you able to create space for connection in your organization or growth with others? These ones, this container definitely has to do more with the organization. So you're not alone. Connect with other people. It could be your manager. Their job is literally to support you. So you are not alone. And there is also this group of amazing people here as well who are here to support you as well. So as we start to wind down, I just want to leave you with this image. Before earlier, I talked about really the career ladder, but I really like to think about career paths more as windy. They're very unique. And what the path of one person is going to be very different than what works for you and what's right for you. And so the road is really long. It can feel like that, especially now with the market, but time is super short. And so I encourage each of you to enjoy the twists, the turns. Even if you're going through a layoff, there may be a time when you actually look back and you're like, huh, remember when I didn't work for that time? Like, I wish I had that back. But make sure to enjoy the ride and you're not alone. Thanks everyone for listening. In terms of next steps for everyone that was here today, you're going to get slides from today's session. You're also going to get a discount code for the workbook if you'd like to explore and do some more self-reflection. I am also offering 5 free slots for a 30-minute breakthrough sample session with me. During this time, no obligation. It's just free time for each of you with me. We will explore where you currently are, where'd you like to go, and then kind of like the gap in between. And I want to make sure that you walk away with action items. So I'm just simply being of service and showing up. You'll get value no matter what. But this is really your time to bring those meaty, juicy questions if you're curious about your career or you want to dive in deeper. Um, with that in mind, I'll kind of open up to questions. This is my email. If you want to shoot me a message directly, feel free. But I wanted to leave time for Q&A for folks so we could dive in a little bit deeper as well.
Great. Thank you, Roberta. One question that came up earlier was, do you have any recommendations for when you're navigating the job search? How do you make sure you land a role with a team that's psychologically safe to work with?
Yeah, yes. Um, it's going to depend, right? I've actually been in many dysfunctional organizations at this point, and so my spidey sense is really attuned for things now. I will have a blog post coming out soon that talks about like what does psychologically safe mean and how do you identify like what are the signals of dysfunction. A lot of the time it's going to be maybe like rushed through the interview process. You're not meeting everyone who's on the team for some reason. They give you really short amount of time to respond. Maybe you don't even have time to answer questions or ask your own questions during the interview process. Or if you even ask questions, you notice like a defensiveness coming back from them or like not wanting to engage. So those are typically some signals. Um, and so just like one thing that I recommend for folks while they're doing the job search process, it's very easy to get into like scarcity mindset of like, oh my gosh, how did I do? I need to perform, I need to meet their expectations because like there's a job description. But take some time and like really think about what are you looking for? Like when I work with clients, I have them create like what's my rubric while I'm searching. And it's usually related to their values, and I have them rank. And then based off of that, they actually create questions. So interview questions that they ask the recruiter, they ask the team that they're interviewing with to make sure that the team meets their needs. Um, so it's a little bit of like identifying what you're looking for and then like picking up the energy too of just like this is a experience, and so what is the actual candidate experience that they're providing you? If you feel pressured, uncomfortable, and you're just talking to them, it's a signal. Listen to your body. Yeah.
Thank you. That's great. Another question I like here. I've heard some folks call work-life balance a total myth, saying that they're constantly flowing into each other, especially in the age of remote work. Should they be thought of holistically? Do you think there should be a hard line between work and life?
Yes. My husband's downstairs, so I feel like if he's listening, I'm gonna hear his response after this. I view it a lot as like work-life integration. I view myself as like I am a holistic person. I am a wife, I'm a sister, I'm a cat mom. I also own a business. I'm a research partner. So I wear all these different identities and like facets to myself. So what that actually means for the workday depends, right? So sometimes I'm doing my business stuff on the weekend because like that's the only time for my deep work, but I contain it as much as possible. So I think in general that our businesses need to think about work-life balance a little bit differently, more of the holistic human, less about like hours and stuff like that. I recommend In lieu of the systems that we operating in supporting work-life balance, it is unfortunately the onus a lot of the time is on us to show up as individuals and set boundaries for ourselves. And so what that means is like setting working hours, saying like, here's my working hours, you got me for this, but other than that, no thanks. I just had, and I say that as someone who is constantly setting a boundary. I just got asked to do a call at 2 a.m. like on Tuesday this week, and I was like, absolutely not. So it is a constant like setting the boundary, holding the boundary as well, but the balance will look different depending who you are, and what's important to you. So
Thank you for that. One question, and it was asked sort of by two people. Do you have any toolkits or any tips for how does a person identify their own values? How do you find clarity of purpose for yourself?
yeah. With my clients that I work with, I have like a toolkit of over 250 things. So it's kind of crazy, but one of the exercises that I walk through is like values discovery. Some quick questions, if you want to write them down right now, is like the thing that is one of my favorites is like what pisses you off? What makes you really angry? Because usually that's a sign of something that's important to you or like a boundary that's been violated. Who are you inspired by? Who do you look up to? What was the most important part of your life, either your career or like the moments that stood out to you? Um, those are all things that show you the important moments that can give you an idea of your values. And then from there, it is actually looking at like, am I honoring these values? Are they showing up? Am I fulfilling them right now? So that's an activity that it sometimes can take months too, and your values will shift. So it can be a process, like an unraveling. So
I like that. What pisses you off? Great self-reflection tool. I love it.
yeah.
Let's see. Any tips for dealing with imposter syndrome?
Yeah. Yes. One of my favorites. I have a blog post actually. I can try and find it. If Helen or Danielle, if while you're on it, it's mindfulwork.substack.com. And there's an article about like how to tame your inner critic. That would be a great resource to send. Um, but typically the thing that I recommend to people is fact checking, right? Because imposter syndrome is a story that we can tell ourselves. It's a I don't know enough, I'm not good enough, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm not smart enough. And it's usually also in comparison to other people. And so as researchers, we know that like this is a story and we will find evidence to make that story be true for us. And so I actually encourage my clients to like, what's the evidence of the exact opposite? So you don't think you're good at XYZ? Let's actually look through, let's talk to people. Like, and I actually recommend that people create a wins journal too. And so it's actually like diving into the narrative and starting to notice too, throughout your workday, in what instances does that story pop up for you? And then starting to dig into like the evidence that you have to prove the opposite. So usually imposter syndrome is like a mindset. And please, 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 I encourage each of you, if this is something that you are dealing with, you are not alone. I am like imposter syndrome 101 case over here. And it takes time to unlearn it. A lot of the time, it is a mindset that we've had for our working career, sometimes our whole lives. And so it takes a long time. It's like training a muscle, like you go to the gym, but it's like a mental, like perception muscle. So just remember that it takes time and yeah, lots of self compassion.
It sounded like a lot of folks are reflecting on their self-compassion during this session as well. To that point, tell me about a wins journal.
I need to read a blog post about this actually. A wins journal is just something that I actually started. So before I became a coach, I worked with coaches for like my own coach for many years. And one of the things that I started doing was putting together a wins journal because I was just like, oh, I feel like I'm doing so much, but it's not good enough. And so like I have a folder on my desktop, like, and I just take screenshots of things like if I'm really proud of something or I get feedback from like a meeting or something, I just throw it in there and it's for myself. And if I'm feeling low or I have a bad day, I like open it up and I'll be like, oh yeah, look at all that. Like, this is great. And so usually that's like when I talk about wins or like perspective, that's the external motivation, right? That's the story, the recognition I'm getting from other people. I also will do a end of week reflection where I do like what am I grateful for this week or what am I proud of? And that's like the internal reflection for myself. That's the internal motivation. So both of those together kind of make the wins journal system that I've put together.
That's great. Someone piped up in the chat. I've heard military folks refer to something as an I love me folder.
Yeah, yeah,
That sounds like
absolutely.
it maps.
Definitely. Kristen Neff is one of my favorite people. She talks a lot about self-compassion. She has a self-compassion workbook actually. And I also, if you go to my website, learnmindfully.co, there's resources there. I have like guided meditations because I'm a mindfulness teacher as well. And so there's like audio recordings around self-compassion, things like gratitude that also help related to like imposter syndrome and mindset and stuff like that.
Thank you. And that was Kristen Neff. Did I get that right?
Yeah, yeah.
Great. Let's see. One person talking about when you're trying to match yourself, your values, etc., with your career, but you're early in your career, what kinds of things can be done when your first gig, your first company didn't start you off on a good path?
Yeah. One of the things that I see often with folks, regardless of career, well, I guess maybe folks who are earlier to mid in their career, is that I hear a lot of like, my company is not supporting me or my manager is not supporting me. And it is, if we think about our lives holistically, it is very rare for one person or one organization to meet all of our needs, right? That's why we have things like maybe we have a partner, we're married, or we have husband, wife, whatever. But we also have friends, we have mentors, we have a therapist. Like I have, I have a business coach, I have a coach, I have a therapist. Like I call it create your executive team or your tribe. It's what's your support system. And so that's my biggest recommendation to folks is if you don't feel like you're getting the support that you need or your needs are not getting met, look outside your work. Like sign up for workshops. There's coaching. There are other people. There's things like ADP lists. There's things like the UXR Guild. Connect with other people and build your tribe. It doesn't always have to be just one person or one organization. Um, for me personally, my first role out of undergrad, first full-time role, I really lucked out. My boss had a PhD in positive psychology. And so that was my first like foray with coaching. And so I was really lucky. And so reach out. There's a lot of people who love coaching and mentoring out there, myself included. So yeah, you're definitely not alone.
Great. Okay, well, that's a really good segue into wrapping things up and reminding folks that if you are looking for that network and you are on the job hunt, our job search councils are great. great next step for you if you need that support system, that external support system. I also want to remind everyone, we do have a survey we'd love for you to fill out about this session. We read your feedback and make changes based on that. So take a look at that link in the chat. And finally, let's do our giveaway. And for folks who want to stick around for breakout groups, we will do our networking. So giving away the book by Phil Terry, Never Search Alone. And Roberta, I'm wondering, was there a question that you recall that really stood out to you? I have one for you.
You have one for me.
I have one for you if you can't
No, I
recall.
do. Yeah. I love Lisa's question about how do you deal with imposter syndrome. So
Great.
I'd love to, yeah.
All right, Lisa. Well, for your thoughtful question, we will be sending you the book, Never Search Alone. So I think we will get your email address and such after the fact. So look out for that for us to coordinate with you. Congratulations. Okay. Thank you so much, Roberta. Thank you for being here today and for walking us through this awesome framework of self-reflection. I think this was so well timed in this job market.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.